Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Friday's stream. Today we have backend topics, and as you can see, in a different way today. So, not with Andreas and not with Kotlin. So, we thought it would be maybe a nice idea to check out how we can do it with Swift. And yeah, so we thought we try out Vapor today. So, and with that being said, Moritz, your turn.
Yes. So since I really like to code in Swift, and I also like to have some kind of backend, I try to combine those two. And one framework which is still left is Vapor. And if you want to switch to my screen,
Yep.
then it is pretty simple. It's not as nice as some of the Kotlin stuff we already saw, but I think it's still pretty nice to have. We already have a few modules we can put in. And so we have something for databases, something for kind of a template engine for HTML. And of course, Apple push notifications are also included. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna start with this. There is actually, get started. The documentation is pretty good. You can find almost everything, but you really have to read through it. It's not just oh yeah, that's how you do it, and then you can do it, but you might have to look for the explanation.
Okay.
So yeah. And there is, of course, you need Xcode, but there is a Vapor tool which you can, which I already installed using Brew, of course, for the macOS, and this will basically give you a template for everything you need.
So a starter template.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see, where am I right now? Okay. Let's go develop. And think I can start with a new press. So now if you type
maybe you can increase the font size a little bit.
Of course. How about this?
It's better. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So the Vapor tool, pretty easy, just a few things. You have a Vapor build, Vapor clean. There's still something for Heroku, which is an online platform where you can actually push your app to. We're going to use a new command, and then you can run it, but we can also just use it in Xcode. So we are going to start with...
I have to move myself.
Sorry, no problem.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's do it like this. So Vapor, new, and let's call it awesome backend, because it's Swift.
Bam.
Of course. I think I updated Xcode.
Nice.
And
so Xcode
let's
select.
try this again. Okay. Fluent is a connection to a database, which you can add right here or add later on. If you say yes now, then you will also get some example code for it. Let's just go for no for now. Leaf is, like I said before, a template engine which you can use to create HTML pages. Okay. And I think for now we don't want this one. And there you go. And the good thing about it is we can just use Open Package Swift to open it. Dun, 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 dun.
It does not exist. So basically, I think you have to CD into the awesome backend. At least it says 2 lines above.
Of course.
Or maybe not.
No, it works.
Okay.
Okay. And for those of you who already worked with Package Manager, it's actually pretty nice. We'll go through all the different parts and give you everything. Sometimes, for some reason, like now, we have 2 packages which don't have a number behind it. And if you try to run it right now, then you will get an error. Let's just wait for the package to be resolved.
It's not finished right now, right? So it's still resolving the packages, so the dependencies, and
it's still an Xcode bug, because normally the first thing which has to be there is the number, the version, and if they're not there on the screen, then something went wrong.
Okay.
But there are a few easy fixes you can do. Sometimes just have to restart it and he will find it for some reason. Just indexing.
So maybe just resolve the packages again or something like that.
So we're gonna just build it, and tells me nope.
Yeah. And then you can say file package manager resolve again.
Yes,
or
I could. I'm just gonna reopen again. And for some reason works.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, just something, I don't know why, just the way it is. Okay, so we don't need the packages, or we can have a quick look at it, but it's nothing special. You have, of course, Vapor, and actually not much else from the Vapor framework. The Swift Neo stuff is those are the libraries or frameworks from Apple itself, what they did. Swift Crypto and a few other things are also from Apple. But basically don't really have to look at this. The nice thing is you already get a Docker Compose file and a Docker image. So for those of you who don't know, Docker image is Docker is a container engine, and in this it will actually create the server itself. It will run in a Docker container, and it will. So this is a command you actually have to run. It will start the server in production and at port 8080.
So you could deploy the Docker container into a server and then just start it, and then you get the whole server.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I think I don't know, if you don't know Docker, then just let us know in the chat, and maybe we can do a specific episode about Docker or something.
Yeah, sure.
No.
So you even get information on how to use this. Right now there's only one service in here. It's just the app, and yeah, we can have another stream for this. Okay, then of course we have our package Swift file.
Basically a standard package.
Right. So you do have the app itself, and you have an executable target, which is run, which will actually run the app. And the only dependency is Vapor.
So all the other dependencies we saw on the left side were dependencies of Vapor. So
right. And we're already on macOS v12, which means we can use async and await. So that's nice. Derived data, the usual stuff. For some reason, you can't hide this in Xcode if you open a package .swift file. because you never need the derived data. As for the public folder, this is where you normally place all your HTML and CSS files or scripts. This is basically visible to the outside. And in here, there's we have one target, the run target, which will just get the environment, start the logging system, start the app with the environment, and when it's done, shut down, and configure the app and run the app. And it's basically it in here. And as you see, we're in the app itself. We have a function which will configure everything. Right now we try the routes from right here. So we have one route without any path, and it just returns it works. And if you go to the path hello, then it will return hello world.
So basically the first one is just the base URL without anything. Right. Then you return it works. So it's the basic stuff like all HTML servers things, the example, right. So like hello world. Yeah. Okay.
And we can just run this.
Maybe not.
No, it's building.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's the first time when you build it.
Those were the two packages missing before. So of course it takes a little bit longer than what you're used to from Kotlin or from Quarkus. But I think it's easier to write it in Swift, especially if you use Swift all the time for iOS or macOS. Okay, it is running. Perfect.
So when you
there you go.
And it's running
localhost
8080. Okay.
Right.
So when we throw this into the browser, we should say it works.
Right? It works. Okay, and now we can do hello. And tells me hello world. Simple. All right, done. Okay. Can stop this right now. One thing which is a little bit confusing in this in the example is that they do have the folder controller, but they don't use it. And I think it's not the best thing to do. So normally what you have a controller for each path you can use, and then you have your logic, what you want to do.
So is it basically like a view controller when you do iOS stuff? So is it comparable to that?
Yes. So so the controller is actually so that's the kind of is the architecture we need here.
Yeah.
So what you have is your controller, which will actually then handle all the different routes you can do.
Okay.
So we will start with a controller to add here. One thing I did before is I created a few files, template files for Vapor, because right now when you create a normal Swift file, it will use Foundation, which is actually not possible in Linux. And if you do it for tests, for example, then the app won't even build. You get some strange error that there's something not working. So I created the three template files, which will help a lot. I can also, if you want to, post them in a Git repository later.
So that's basically your own creation. That's not
Right.
from Vapor itself or something.
So I can do, let's call this main controller for now. And the only difference is it imports vapor
and
nothing else.
Fans. Okay.
Okay, and since this is supposed to be a controller, we want to have it called a route collection. And what a route collection actually needs is, do I need this? I don't think I just need trunk boot routes. There you go. And what I can do now in, let's see how I'm doing this. Dun, 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 dun. In now here, to look a little bit into the other project I'm running, but yeah, so let's do try app dot register, and there you have a collection, and I want to I want to register the main controller. And it's basically it. So now what I can do is group it. So now here I normally define what are the different paths you can take, what are the special things you need, what how does the path look, how does the query look, and all the stuff.
Mm-hmm. So that you don't define in routes. So you say you define the controller itself and it brings its own routes with it, or how do you do it? So I thought the routes are for defining the different paths you have, and in that route you call the controller. So is it not like that?
Kind of. So there are two different things. So you have routes. Those are single routes.
Okay.
Okay. And this one. The only thing I do is, if the route is being called and there's nothing here, so there's no path, then it will return this. And in here, if you have a path which with hello, then it will return this. But this is, you don't want to do all this for every single path you want to have. You want to kind of combine it to different parts, or to one part. And what we can do is we can actually, let's say we start with a version and have this be routes and group them. Grouped, yes. And now we need, let's call it V1.
Or okay, so
that's the first version. Okay. So it would be nice to have something, so you have your base.
So it's basically the base URL /v1/ and then the rest of the.
Right. Yes. Okay. So you have a base URL, whatever this is, and then you have /v1
and / and something else.
Now whatever comes down here
okay.
is has to use this version right here.
Okay.
Let's put this above.
So basically, every URL which has the base URL and v1 in it will be routed to this controller.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, of course, we have to use a version, and we can do a simple get on it. And tell.
So that's basically like the app itself in the routes file, the main pattern.
Yes.
Okay. So you have the version where you can say get, post, put, what else?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can do get list something. And we want to use What? I want to use list, which is supposed to be a function, and there's a request which we want to have request, and which is supposed to be async and can throw, of course, and the answer should be of type response.
So basically, the version.get list maps the path to the function list. So
Right. Yeah.
it injects the request which was provided, and
So this is supposed to be list.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and you could have so what you have to return is always some kind of an object which confirms to content. But this is sometimes a little bit more difficult. So I have a little wrapper for this.
So we have one question in chat. Can you also get a DTO as an input instead of a request and return a DTO? So basically exchange the request with your own DTO thing.
Can you also get a DTO as an input instead of a request and return a DTO? So the request is actually has a few more things, and if you want to get some kind of data out of it, then you have to ask the request.
So basically the request is the HTTP request.
Right. Yes.
And then you can transform this one in the method to your own objects, or what you can do whatever you want, right? And use then your own stuff and DTOs and so, and then put the DTOs back into the response, for example.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So,
exactly. Yeah. So what we can do is
so you have to pass the data yourself. Yeah, it seems so.
Yes.
Okay.
So even though Vapor's on version 4, there are still a few things that could be handled easier. So let's say you have some kind of a search query. Then you have to actually use a request and get the query, and then decode it into whatever object you want, and it has to confirm to content, to the content protocol.
Okay. So
yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than in Quarkus, in Kotlin, because the system is way more advanced, and it's
so at the moment you don't have that helper things which you have in Quarkus.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to do a lot of things by your own.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So for now you have to do this. There are a few helpers I already wrote for myself, because usually you don't or the good thing about a response is it can be an error, or it can be an actual object you want to return. But let's just create a new, let's call it model, and Vapor struct, and just call it response content, and we can confirm this to content.
To conform to content, as you said before.
So now if I go back here, I can also do this.
Okay.
But the problem is, if you want to handle errors in your response, then it's kind of difficult doing it with an object you created.
Mhm.
Because of course, the response, the normal response thing you have here can be actually anything. It's a basic response you get. So you have a body, you have headers, status, version, HTTP version, whatever.
So the basic HTTP stuff.
Right, that's a basic response you can get. But if you do this, then of course there's nothing much in here, because this is only more or less codable.
Mhm.
There are a few more things, but those won't help you when you want to return an error, for example. So it's easier to return a response and have everything you have in here wrap in a response. And then if you have an error, then you can say, okay, let the response be an error and not an object. But if you have no errors in your call, then you can tell them, okay, let's have the response actually be the response you want to have.
Mhm.
And I already wrote a little package for this, which will help with this. And
So we add a second dependency.
we're adding a second dependency. And we also want to use this
Row 18, right?
Product. I can do this again. So now when I save it.
So now, you did a keycaster thing.
Yes.
Where
so
will
now
it be
if I
displayed?
press any,
Because I think it could.
it's on the wrong
Okay.
screen.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
put it
perfect.
right in the middle. So now
Okay.
if I do something.
So the shortcuts things.
Right. Okay. Where's my?
We have a little error, right?
It's in here. It's in there. It's supposed to work.
Unknown package.
But why? Common vapor, common vapor, common vapor. It's supposed to
Common
work
underscore
like this.
vapor.
Ah, true. Package name is supposed to be this. Okay.
So now it should fetch the dependency.
So now I have common vapor in here. And I have this responding protocol, which will actually always return a response. And what you only have to do is you can put your content in here and it will create a response. And if you put an error in there, it will also return a response, which is kind of nice.
So, and the content is basically just another protocol? Is it?
Content is
it's
just
the basic vapor protocol.
Yeah, it's a codable object, which has to be coded and decodable.
Default content
into JSON or whatever. Okay, so if we do, let's add, wait. I have to import the common vapor, and then I want to have this confirm to responding, which means if I have any object, so now I can basically wrap anything in here.
That the Xcode project settings. Which one? The thing you saw before is the package structure where you can define all the dependencies you need in the project, and it generates a project with this package file. if that is the answer you asked for. So basically, here you can define the targets, and as you can see at the bottom in row line 29, there you can define the test target for the testing. The executable target is the actual thing which gets run when Moritz taps on play.
Yes.
And the app target is our project. So
Right.
And the Swift settings are some additional settings which Vapor needs. Yeah, okay. And that gets written into the project settings.
Right. So the important part we can basically remove. We could remove this part.
The question is it needed by Vapor, this part?
I've actually not tried it without it.
I would suggest that
I
it's
just left it
needed
in.
because cross-module optimization, but it's only for release. So
Yeah.
it's basically saying that the module gets optimized when you do a release build, and you don't have all the debug stuff in it.
Right. So, and basically, you can also write your iOS program in a Swift package, but then of course you need a few more things here, and you have to add all your dependencies, you have to add all your targets manually, and then you don't have a project file. You just have the package.swift file.
Yep. And then you can import it in every Xcode project as Swift package, and then
Yeah, right.
So you could structure, maybe that's too much info now for this topic, but you can split your whole app into different Swift packages if you want. So you can, if you have, for example, in-app purchases in an iOS app or something like that, you could create an in-app purchase package where all the logic is in for the subscription or for the purchase logic, and then you can reuse it in every app you have. So basic package structures.
Yeah.
If it's interesting for you, then we can do the Swift package stuff maybe also in an additional iOS episode, maybe. So we have a closer look to the Swift package manager.
Yeah. But for Vapor, this is nice because you don't really need any more explanation. You have a platform, you have, of course, the Vapor dependency, and then you have this part. Of course, if you don't write tests, then you don't need this part, but you at least need the executable target and the target itself. And that's it. If you do this for iOS or for macOS, then you need plist information for what or which view controller will be the first, which storyboard will be used, if you use Swift UI and all the stuff. But for Vapor, this is really, really easy. There's not much to do in it. Okay. One thing I had to learn with Vapor is, so if you...
Oh, my camera, not again.
Nice.
Yeah, go on. I try to fix my cam.
Okay, so for iOS and macOS, you don't really have to... you just have to make sure that your object you're using will actually be somehow connected to your app. But for Vapor, you have to make sure that everything you do will be on the request, because that's the only thing alive in a Vapor app. So if you want to do another call to a different server, or you want to... nice. Or
now I know how to fix it.
Or you want to access a database, then you always have to do this on the request. If you lose the request, then the server or this route will shut down. So the request is the most important thing you can do, or you have. So that's basically, I think for iOS would be the app delegate, or for macOS as well. If you lose a app delegate, then your whole program will crash. And that's the same thing
Okay.
for Vapor. If you lose a request in any way, for example, if you open a new client, new HTTP client, and then make a connection to an external server, then you will never get anything from the server because the connection will be closed before that.
Mhm.
So it's basically the main things what you do is you actually create extensions on the request
Mhm.
and work with those. So I can show you a little project I was working on. It's a little bigger, but I can start with a few easy things. So we have the routes here. I have, so this is supposed to get me the audiobooks from Audible, just the metadata, no downloads, no audio files or nothing. And I have to get some information from Open Library. I also tried to add it from iTunes, but the information isn't really that good. So let's go into the Audible controller, which is here a different package. As you can see, there's a different target. You have the app itself, and then you have Audible. And I tried to organize it a little bit better here, so I don't have to use the strings in my boot routes configuration. So I defined the path components I want to use beforehand, and then this whole part looks a little better. So what I do is the same thing we did before. I had a version. This is a version 1.
Mhm.
This is supposed to be the base URL, and then you have Audible from up here,
Mhm.
and then you have the V1, and everything behind that uses the
Okay,
version.
so the array gets concatenated. So
Yeah.
if you would add a third one, then you would have v1, the third one /star.
Right.
Okay.
So, and this way I can have more controllers, and I can just name it V2 and then add a different number here,
Mhm.
not V1. Then this is going to be the second version of my backend. And as you can see, there's also the different parts you can get.
Mhm.
And we even get those parts in here.
So the dynamic one, so the ID would be
Right.
the ID of a specific audiobook.
Correct. So what we have to do is, for this one, I always want to get the accepted language, which I learned in our backend stream actually. And then I can ask the request to get me the path parameter at Audible ID. And this Audible ID, go to the reviews again. How did I do this? Didn't I use this one?
So
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I grouped it with this one. So if you put something with a, I call it colon, in it, then it's a variable which you can define when you do the post or the get call. So it's in here. So you always get.
So okay. So basically the comment should say :audible ID in your example command, not ID, right?
Right, yes.
So it would be Audible ID on the, yeah, exactly.
So it would be like this, actually.
And whatever value would be there, it extracts it from the request.
Right.
Okay.
And this one would actually be the route just to the ID.
Yeah.
And then I can say, okay, give me the reviews or give me the chapters.
Okay.
And this way I can get the path parameter Audible ID without the colon this time. And this will be the Audible ID. And then I get a range, which I have a little helper for. So it will actually do the query, which we saw before, decodes it to pagination query, which is a content, a structure which is confirming to content.
So this is a structure
This is
which
the
you
content.
created, or is
Yes,
it?
this is something I created.
Okay. Mm.
And what I'm looking for is page and page count.
Mhm, okay.
And if I get this object in my query,
Mm.
then I will return it. And if not, I will just tell them, okay, give me page 0 and page count 1
Okay.
as a fallback. So it's not optional here. That's a range. And now you see we have a.
So just one question. So
Yes.
in row 83, so the request.audibleRefuse.
Yes.
So because normally you could think you should only call a other function, but that's what you said before, right? So you
Right.
have to, if you do it like that, it could be that
if
a
I
request.
do this call without my request, then it will happen, but it will not give me anything back because it's just fire and forget. So I need to hold on to the request. So that's the only thing alive. If I'm losing the request, then everything else is gone.
So, and just to be sure that you don't lose the request, you basically add the functions directly to the request.
Right. I will go into the reviews, or maybe I'm looking into a smaller one. But this is something I did in the end. So all my responses are actual responses. They're not any content confirming objects. And what I can do, I can just say wrap the response, whatever is in here. And since I have a try in here and a try in here, and there's a do here, I will catch every error and then just say, okay, unwrap audible error, and then it will go through some things.
You put the error you receive and the requested URL and the language in it, so you can see in the response what was called and with which language and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, cool.
So this is, I had this function before, which was nice, but then I had the problem of what do I do with errors. And so I had this audible errors. I have special reports it can create, which is also an error. So those will all work. And okay, let's go through something simple. So what I want to have, let's say I want to get all the genres that Audible provides. And I have to do an extension on the request because I have to hold on to that one. I will get the URL. It's just a factory where I can create it. And
so you're just checking for some stuff in the request if you have it, and if everything is there, then you create a genre content.
Right. I haven't looked at this for a long time. So let's see. Here, okay. So here I get the URL, and then I get the URL, which is something I already also put in because there's a client on the request, which I have to use. So I can create my own client, but then of course I lose the request. So I have to do everything on the request. That's why I have to have another extension on the request.
But wouldn't it be possible just to store the request somewhere so you don't? Is it a struct or a class? It's a class, right?
It's a request. It's a final class.
But then it should be possible to hold just a reference to it. As long as
where do you want to hold the reference? because that's the only. So this was something I had to get my head around.
Yeah.
The only thing I have is, for example, if I open Postman and do a request, the only thing alive is the request. There's nothing else running.
Okay, but in the controller you can't hold it somewhere. So
No, you can't.
like on an iOS app, just a property for it.
Right.
That's not possible in Vapor.
No.
Okay.
So let's say
So
I want
normally
to-
I would say here var request is a request, optional or something like that. And then when I receive the request, so for example in the genre call, I would say request equals rec, also request. So I store it in the property. And when I'm done, I nil it. Shouldn't
Yeah.
that also do the same
So
thing?
that's a nice idea.
Okay.
But how about we have two people connecting to the server? One is calling the genre and one is calling the search. At the same
Okay,
time.
so the controller is only once there. So
Right.
so not for each request a different controller.
No.
So the controller is in the server. So it's only one time there. Okay, then it makes sense. Okay.
So now the problem is
Yeah, then
I
that
can't
would,
save it.
Yeah, okay.
That's really the only thing I have,
that's
which
a
keeps
little
this
bit-
thing alive.
that's yeah. So in a normal iOS app, it would be no problem.
Right, yeah. You can just save it
Yeah,
and
okay,
then
but
use
on the
it
server
later.
side, yeah, okay. That's so
So that-
the little things you have to consider.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing alive. So
Okay.
the server's running, but there's nothing alive which I can save stuff to and get it back and use it later or something. No.
Okay.
You have to. This is one route I have to do. So if I want to call a different server, I have to wait on this request, call the different
Yeah, it
server,
makes
get
sense.
back, and
Yeah.
then also databases, I have to use the request to do the database stuff.
So you basically have everywhere extensions on the request? Or
Yeah.
Okay. Where you extend the basic request to your own needs with your own methods and stuff? Okay. And that
So
okay,
I have
then you
for books, for chapters, for genres, that's the
Okay.
one we looked at before. Import reviews is always so here. For imports, for example, I need to always, so I want to have all the data, so I have to do a loop, and I have to ask the Audible server again and again and again and again, but I always have to make sure that I don't lose my request. If I lose my request, then everything's gone.
Yeah, so you have to have it open, so
Yeah,
not
right.
finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense because when the request finished, it would be sending the response to the client, which
Right.
requested that thing from the server.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
So
You have to think a little bit different.
Right. Yeah, that's the main problem I have, or I
Okay.
had when I started with Vapor, because if you have an iOS app or a macOS app, then you don't care about holding on to stuff because it's always there.
And it's only this app which is running
Right.
on your device.
Yeah.
And you don't have to think about parallel requests and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, you have a lot of things. So as I said, I get the URL before. I have a GET request, and it's just a path-through extension which will actually do the GET request on the client. It's the same thing
So a
here.
little bit convenience method.
Yeah, just convenience. I have this for post, patch, put, and delete, all different things. Yeah, and so this will be the Audible response, which is just in response. So I have to decode it, which I do here. And of course, the Audible product response is supposed to be content. And there's all this stuff in here. Just a few classes or structs I need. And I try to decode it. And if the decoding fails, then I will throw an Audible API error. And if
That
I
could be when Audible changes the
Right.
response,
Yeah.
for example,
or
add
if I
something or
messed up and
Yeah,
some values are supposed to be optional and they're not,
yeah.
or something. And when I finally get something which I can work with, then I use the projects and map them to something I can actually use.
So that's basically your DTO, your
Right.
internal DTO on the server
I
side.
think in here it's even also content. It's just the names are a little bit better, and I only need the information I want to have.
So basically,
also
it's
have-
it's a struct which represents the JSON data.
Right. So I have authors, narrators, and they're both kind of persons.
Yeah.
And when I'm done with this, I will basically just return the Audible collection response, which is just a wrapper around. So I get the audiobooks. I also include the search requests I did. And the count, which is also something I learned from our backend stream. So before that, I only returned the content without a wrapper, but so I have a wrapper where I know, okay, this is the request and this is my answer. And
so that's basically when something an error happens, then you can see, okay, what was the request?
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, maybe
So
so
most
for
of it-
debugging information reasons.
Yeah. So it is not as simple to debug as on iOS, where you can set breakpoints, but most of the breakpoints work. There are some funny situations where the breakpoints.
That would
will
be my
not work.
next question, is if it's possible just to add a breakpoint and then do
Sure.
the request. Yeah, okay.
So let's do this one.
Yeah, we can maybe do it
In
in
here?
our easy example. So I don't know if you can
Sure. Yeah.
want to run
We can
this
just
one.
we can let's.
So basically, when you add a in the routes,
we want to do it here or here. Not sure if I can run this now, or if I broke it. Of course, I broke it.
yeah, you have to return a response here.
Well, let's just
Oh,
do
yeah,
this
okay.
and configure. I don't want to do this. So now
the
it's
server's
running,
and
now I call it. Now when I go back,
okay,
there's a breakpoint here.
And then we could have a look at the request now in the console, right?
Right.
When you do a PO request, for example. That's
let's do this.
yeah, okay. You could have a look at the request. Yeah, it's okay.
That's basically it, yeah. So it even tells me what I'm running on. And there you see, of course, the accepted language.
Yeah, it's the default one because you don't provide one. Yeah.
So now, of course, I can do more things here, and so the breakpoints work. No problem. I think we had this issue with Kotlin where the breakpoints didn't really work, where you had to get the error message and then find out where the problem is. So this will actually work pretty well if your project isn't as complex. With my project, I still haven't found a place where the breakpoints don't work. But I have seen server applications where the breakpoints don't really give you anything pretty good. So yeah. But that's basically Vapor. So it's backend.
So the basic setup.
Yeah.
Okay. So are there any questions in chat? Or
I think you only have one person watching, right?
I don't know.
And
But yeah, But maybe it would be interesting to do additional episodes on that topic. So, for example, maybe also add the stuff we did with Quarkus,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
we try to do it with Vapor, and then we compare the two versions. So, just to see if it's more difficult with Swift, or is it possible with Vapor, or are there any things which are problematic and so. And yeah, no, we have more than one viewer. So
Yeah. Our friend from the other side of the ocean.
yeah, I like the Vapor stream. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it would be also great to dig further into that topic. So
Sure. Yeah. So as you can see, I have a few things I have done here. This is basically for Audible and
yeah. So then it would be easy for you to implement all the stuff we did with Quarkus,
right. Yeah.
with Vapor. So
So I already have a few endpoints in here because it's really hard to get the correct data.
What would interesting would be how the performance thing when it runs on a real server. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Because when I first heard about Vapor, everybody said no, it's not production ready. So I think now you said it's version 4 right now.
Yeah.
And
it's actually 4.60.3.
Okay, so it should be production ready with that version number, right?
Yeah. Well, you can do a lot with it. I think there are still a few things that can be improved, especially if you look at the code which is used to do it in Quarkus. It's a lot less. It's a lot more convenient to do a few things. This is still a lot of work for. So I'm pretty sure if Andreas did it in Quarkus, it will not take as long as I did to write all this.
And there is a question: what does it build to? Can we just deploy it in a cluster, for example? Yeah, as you said before, it creates a Docker container,
right?
And you can deploy everywhere where you can deploy a Docker container.
Yeah.
So when you now build this one, it automatically creates the container, right?
No, it won't create the container if I run it like this. So this is only one app. So if I look at here, I have a few more targets in it, but I only have one executable target. So it's the same. It's a run target, and it will run the app.
Okay.
And the app is up here, and it has a few dependencies. But it's a basic setup, just as our little program does here.
Yeah, but when you want to deploy it now on a server, for example, then you archive it like an iOS app, or how do you do that?
Well, you can just use a Docker file to actually create.
Okay. You create a Docker image with that file, and then the created image has everything in it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And as we saw in our backend stream, GitHub can host the Docker file, or the Docker image. So and then we can just use it in the Docker Compose. The Docker Compose is mostly used if you have more than one service. So if you need a database and you need, I don't know, a second service or whatever, then you need the Docker file, Docker Compose file. If you just want to run this one server, then you can just use a Docker file.
Okay, cool. So we could do it with GitHub Actions to create a Docker file, add it to the registry on GitHub, for example, and then we could say we get this image and deploy it on a real server.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, maybe that would be really interesting to add our backend for the iOS app also in Vapor, maybe, or at least maybe one call or something.
Sure.
And then just to have a feeling about what the difference is between Quarkus and Vapor, I would think that on Vapor side you have to implement more stuff because you don't have that much convenience
Yes.
in it right now. So, but I think it should be possible to do the same thing here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay,
So
interesting.
shouldn't be that much different. Actually, the same thing.
Yeah.
Quarkus and Kotlin just have so many more things they already optimized, and you have yeah, just different, how you call them, annotations, I think, in Kotlin. You have annotations to tell them, okay, this is the path component, this is the ID you want to pass in, and so there are so many things which are really, really easy. I try to get into it, but I haven't found the right way to do it.
Okay.
So for now, I have my common vapor thing, which everyone, of course, is more than welcome to use it. It's a public repository. You can just use it, common vapor. And there are more, but I think all the big backend developers, they probably use Quarkus or something else.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Vapor is if you have an iOS developer, for example, who knows Swift, then it, with some specific things in mind, because it's now a backend, a server-side thing, but it's possible to do a backend by your own when you are an iOS developer.
So at least
because
you know
it's
the
Swift.
language.
Yeah, you know the language.
That's a plus. Of
You have
course,
to learn the specific server-side stuff and what you have to implement, import, and so on.
But you actually do get a lot of great information from here.
Okay.
So you get the basics, you have the routing, content client, all the stuff. You have some validations and Fluent, which is the database stuff. You have Leaf, which is the HTML part if you want to serve a homepage. Redis, some kind of it's a database in memory.
So the question in chat is, what is the recommended storage for Vapor SQLite?
I think most of them use PostgreSQL, but yeah. Think Fluent overview. So there are a few different models. You have you need the Fluent driver, and then you need the Fluent driver for your specific database.
Yeah, but
so
on the right side you see drivers: Postgres, SQLite, MySQL, MongoDB. Okay.
And of course, it's all code. There's no core data you have to work around.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, are there any other questions? Otherwise, the question because I know Flux is an iOS developer. Are you excited for next week? So what's your expectation for the WWDC? So no core data. Yeah. And so we wait for if there are any other questions, or otherwise we would wrap up the stream for today. So then, just for information, next week on Friday there will be next Friday there will be a stream, hopefully. It should be an iOS stream.
Yes,
so
next
maybe
Friday I will be the host, and Jonas still has the program.
And we have to ask Jonas if he has time
course,
next week, but because I'm not here next week, Moritz would do the host, and and I think next week should also game dev stream, but I don't know if it's on Tuesday or Wednesday because I think there were some changes in the schedule. But yeah, just follow our channel, activate the notification thing on Twitch, and then you get informed when we start a stream. And yeah, so I see no other questions in chat. Then I would say, yeah, have a nice weekend.
Yeah.
And we see us, some of us next week. And yeah, that's it.
All right.
So have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Nice weekend. Bye.